Chapter 19. Vinyl woke from chilly tendrils of air brushing against her cheek. She shivered and tried to sink deeper under the covers, but the movement only brought the cold wind to the rest of her body. With an angry grunt, she threw the covers aside and sat up to find the source of her discomfort. It wasn't difficult. All the light in the room came from the window, drawing her eyes like moths to a flame. The window was wide open, letting all the heat escape into the atmosphere. Octavia stood in front of it, her face out of view as she peered out into the not-so-distant campus. Her charcoal mane and tail swayed gently in the light breeze, yet she didn't even seem remotely bothered by it. Seized by a curiosity that stifled her shivers, Vinyl slipped out of their makeshift double bed and trotted quietly over to her filly friend. Upon closer inspection, Octavia's eyes were wide open in an attempt to absorb as much light as she could. "Babe?" whispered Vinyl, placing a hoof on her cellist's shoulder. The mare in question giggled, a smile spreading across her face like fire in a hearth.
"Look at the city, Vinyl! Isn't it lovely?"
For the first time that morning, Vinyl looked out the window. It took a moment for her to realize what had changed, but once she did, it seemed so obvious that she felt a little silly for not noticing earlier.
Hot damn, that's a lot of snow.
Everything from the trees to the rooftops was covered in glistening whiteness, fresh from a night of silent descent. Even the Pegasus exclusive buildings above were coated in snow that had fallen from clouds even higher than theirs. Some ponies were already out there, pushing big plows to get the paths clear before the day truly began. Outside the campus, the city of Manhattan grunted and groaned to life as dedicated unicorns and earth ponies set about pulling back the thick layer of snow, like taking the blanket away from an unwilling student before a full day of classes. A few playful Pegasi chased each other through the sky over the campus, their distant laughter giving the scene a cheerfulness that dispelled the usual uncomfortable nature of snowfall. The sight brought forth a few flickering memories from the back of Vinyl's mind. She remembered playing in the street with her neighbors, using her magic to form the snow into funny shapes. Shock rippled through her as she realized those days were over 10 years ago. Swallowing back her uneasiness at the realization, she tried to distract herself with monotony.
Right, so what's on the agenda? Well,
she thought.
First we need to get some breakfast. Oh, sweet Celestia! It's Octavia's birthday tomorrow, and I don't have a present!
Panic shot through her as she stiffened visibly, eyes bulging. Almost immediately, the rational part of her brain, which had been growing stronger as of late, kicked in and reminded her that she still had an entire day to find a gift. Her limbs relaxed, and she almost sank to the floor in tentative relief. Yes, there was still the matter of finding a suitable gift, but how hard could that be, really? Vinyl glanced towards Octavia to see if she had noticed her little panic attack. It was difficult to tell, however, as the gray mare was no longer there. The sound of water splashing against tiles reached her ears, presenting the answer to her unasked question. It seemed Octavia had left Vinyl to enjoy the view while she got ready. The unicorn smirked. Luck seemed to be on her side today. She quickly trotted over to some school supplies and found a pen and paper. Thinking quickly, she quickly wrote a vague note explaining she had to go out for a while. It wouldn't hold up in court, but it would be enough to get her a few hours of present hunting. With the note left noticeably on the bed, Vinyl slipped on her grayish-purple boots and beanie and darted out the door. As she trotted down the hall, she wondered if Octavia was just now exiting the bathroom and reading the note. A slight panic overtook Vinyl's motor functions, making her leap down the first flight of stairs in the stairwell without a single glance. Thankfully, no pony was in her way this time. Her glorious escape from beneath the eyes of the sexy cellist regime was complete. She thanked the stars that their room's window didn't overlook the path leading to the main campus as she shuffled down it. The boots helped, but nothing was truly safe from Manhattan weather. The cold seeped in slowly as she walked, though her body heat kept it from getting to her hooves at least. The beanie, meanwhile, worked like a charm. Vinyl's head was kept in a fuzzy warmth that brought a sheepish smile to her lips. Sheepish, mainly because she should have chosen a gift weeks ago.
Octavia's my Philly friend now. I can't afford to forget this stuff.
Vinyl would never forgive herself if their relationship was hurt by something as stupid as her bad memory. She paused at the university main entrance to steady herself. Just thinking about what she had with Octavia being hurt in any way was enough to make her feel a little ill. Somewhere in the back of her mind, the word lovesickness was being tossed around a lot. It was a silly thought, but part of it struck a chord with her, namely, the first syllable. Shaking her head violently, Vinyl refused to be sidetracked. Somewhere out in the city, the perfect gift was waiting. All she had to do was take the first step. The train rumbled along in a most undesirable way. The elegant mare shivered distastefully at the thought of her valuable luggage being tossed around by the vibrations. There was some very expensive jewelry in there. Nothing from her main collection, of course, but some tertiary pieces that would suffice if she needed to dress up. This occasion was important, but not that important. For now, she simply wore her signature silver necklace, embedded with a stunning blue gem and speckled with gold. Another round of violent shaking set her teeth on edge. Tertiary or not, her luggage was still extremely valuable. There were some fine dresses and scarves in there as well. No gifts, of course, not yet. There was still a lot of evaluation that needed to be done before she would even think about rewarding her daughter. Sighing as the shaking ceased, she turned her attention to the window. A light flutter of snow was descending, and the landscape grew whiter by the second. She nodded in satisfaction. Manhattan was close. Vinyl stepped out of the shop, feeling disheartened. It was the 5th time she'd done it in the past couple of hours. Each store was packed with baubles and trinkets of 1,000 different kinds, but she still couldn't find anything suitable. Even the more expensive gifts just didn't seem like enough. After all, Octavia had probably grown up with gem-encrusted toys and jewelry. These things would just seem like cheap, sparkly stones to her. She rubbed her forehead in frustration. How do you buy a gift for some pony who grew up with everything? Not to mention, she wasn't exactly rolling in bits at the moment. She almost regretted all those nights they had gone out for dinner. Almost. A childish gasp of wonder came from nearby. Vinyl turned around and saw a young pony poking at a yellow and pink striped streamer wrapped around a pole. Upon closer inspection, she saw that the streamer led to a bench, then to another pole. A few more ponies were standing near it, exchanging curious theories. Vinyl trotted to the other pole, following the streamer with her eyes. It traced a path along the street, between lights and bins and any other object that was tall enough for it to be attached to. She followed it, along with a growing number of interested ponies, much like a cat would a piece of yarn being dragged across the ground. After a few moments of this, she sheepishly chided herself for such foolish behavior. She had business to attend to. But as much as she wanted to get back to gift hunting, she really wanted to see where the streamer was going. So she quickly jogged after it, fully intending to return to the matter at hoof once her curiosity was satisfied. The colorful lead reached an end at a festive-looking light pole. Tinsel and little floating pom-poms orbited around it, bathed in a faint mint-green glow. A couple of other curious commuters had stopped to investigate the odd sight.
Is there a holiday that I've forgotten?
Asked one old mare as she balanced 3 shopping bags on her back.
Not that I recall,
answered a stallion in a suit. A little blue filly squealed in excitement.
Look over there!
Every pony followed her gaze and found another decorated pole on a nearby street corner. Immediately, regardless of age, the group gleefully bounded over to it. Attached to the new pole was another streamer, this time leading down a different street. There was a growing hum of commotion in that direction, indicating they were on the right track. Vinyl grinned, unashamed to be enjoying the little hunt. It reminded her of old pirate stories about looking for treasure by following a special map. Once more, the group quickly trotted after the streamer. The older members caught between curiosity and reserved dignity. while the younger members disregarded any pretense of disinterest, sprinting ahead to find the next trail. Vinyl joined them, reaching the next brightly colored pole only seconds after the kids. This time, rather than being tied to the middle, the streamer was attached to the top and stayed out of reach as it crossed the road and connected to the top of a 2-story building on the street corner. A large crowd milled about the street before it, and Vinyl noticed that there were several other streamers leading to other streets, all drawing ponies toward this building. They must be all over Manhattan. The DJ pushed through the crowd, something she was no stranger to doing, and managed to reach the front. A double door dominated the front of the building, constantly held open by the unending torrent of ponies gushing in and out. The walls were painted the same color as the streamers and poles, with bright patterns and eye-catching decorations everywhere. Above the door, a sign proudly proclaimed Bonbon's Confectionery. Vinyl's jaw dropped. Such a massive commotion? Just for a candy shop? It was ridiculous. Yet, here it was, right in front of her. Ponies were entering with inquisitive expressions and leaving with bags of candy filled to the brim, chocolate smiles on every face. Whatever Bonbon and Lyra were doing, they were doing it right. Shrugging, Vinyl let herself be carried inside by the current of customers. The interior of the shop's ground floor was even brighter than expected, with pale cream green walls and a number of extravagant displays of culinary creations. There was no doubt about it, Bonbon was a candy genius. Children ran amok in wondrous ecstasy, and adults desperately tried to retain their composure as they felt emotions they had almost forgotten, the desire to once again be a kid in a candy store. Magical displays floated above it all, colorful wrappers dancing around in formation, each of them carrying a faint hint of green haze. The source wasn't difficult to spot. Lyra walked around the outskirts, horn pulsing occasionally to touch up or adjust one of her spells. Vinyl would never admit it, but she was a little bit impressed by how many different spells were in motion, not to mention those on the streets outside. Lyra didn't show any sign of exertion though, just a little smile that seemed a lot more natural than the smirks she used to wear. Turning her eyes to the counter, Vinyl stood on her hind legs to see over the crowd. She felt a little bit like a meerkat, but it worked. Strangely enough, Bonbon wasn't at any of the registers. They were being run by several teenagers seemingly straight out of high school, plus Carrot Top, who was apparently supervising them. With no Bonbon in sight, Vinyl reluctantly picked through the crowd in Lyra's direction. The mint green unicorn noticed her approach and nodded in silent greeting.
Hey there.
Vinyl said, struggling to raise her voice over the din.
Don't suppose you know where Bonbon is, do you? I wanted to congratulate her.
Lyra nodded.
She's upstairs at the moment. Here, follow me.
Without further ado, the DJ followed her behind the counter to a flight of stairs. They trotted up quickly, the noise not fading in the slightest, and slipped through the door at the top, closing it behind them. Even after that, the sound from the floor below remained as loud as ever. The top floor was much less extravagant than the shop below, instead looking more like a normal flat. It was a lot bigger than Vinyl's old place, with a couple of bedrooms leading off from the main living area, as well as a fully stocked kitchen. The floor was covered in a plain yet soft carpet, and the furniture looked halfway decent. It was safe to say that Bonbon and Lyra were living very differently than the rest of the university students. Bonbon was reclining on the couch reading, earmuffs strapped tightly to her head. Upon Lyra magically poking her, she sat up and uncovered her ears, wincing at the sudden return of noise to her world.
Hi, Vinyl!
She shouted, slightly too loudly.
It's great to see you, but I'm not sure we can have much of a conversation like this.
The cream-colored mare looked helplessly at Lyra, who shrugged as if saying,
What do you expect me to do?
A light bulb flickered on in Vinyl's mind.
Hang on, I've got an idea.
She turned back to the door leading downstairs and jammed her eyes shut in concentration.
Now, what did Leafy say?
She channeled magic into her horn, letting it drift within her shapelessly, then opened her eyes and focused on the door. The magic took form, slipping into and plugging not only the cracks at the side of the door, but the impossibly small ones within the wood and surrounding walls itself. She looked around the room, painting the walls and floor with the spell, letting it infuse with the structure of the entire level and cutting it off from unwanted vibrations in the air. It was a lot bigger than her home with Octavia, so she was panting slightly at the end of it. The fact that she could hear herself breathing again was all she needed to know that she had succeeded.
Better?
She grinned at the two stunned ponies.
Much.
Bonbon whispered hoarsely. Lyra frowned.
That was pretty good magic. I didn't think about finding a spell to help with the noise.
Vinyl shrugged, determined not to be a cocky jerk today.
Yeah, well, it would have been hard to keep going while doing all those other fancy spells downstairs and outside. They were, pretty impressive, by the way. Thanks.
Lyra hesitated before continuing, but when she did, she wore that little smile again.
Do you think you can teach me that spell?
It could be useful for maintaining Bonbon's sanity. Bonbon rolled her eyes.
We'll look it up later, Lyra. Vinyl clearly didn't come here to save us from the racket.
The business owner put her book down and trotted over to join them.
So, what does bring you here today? I know I invited you and Octavia around here anytime, but you have the look on a mare on a mission, so it can't be a casual visit.
It's not.
Vinyl fidgeted a bit at having to explain herself in front of Lyra. This was going to take some getting used to.
Okay, well, it's Octavia's birthday tomorrow, and I don't have a gift. I came into town looking for one, but I couldn't find anything good enough. Then I got distracted by your streamers and found your store. At first I just wanted to congratulate you about how awesomely the shop is doing. But now that I'm here, do you have any idea what I should get her?
Bonbon wore a thoughtful expression, but Lyra was chuckling softly.
You waited until the day before to start looking for a gift?
The DJ scratched the back of her head sheepishly.
I was distracted.
Yeah, I'll bet you were. Vinyl opened her mouth to reply, but was cut off by Bonbon.
Oh, don't start, you two. You were doing so well. Vinyl, I'm guessing nothing in my store would really measure up to your Philly friend, right?
Well, yeah, pretty much. No offense.
I understand. Have you considered that sometimes the best gifts aren't ones that you can buy?
You sound like the after-school special.
Lyra snorted back laughter that quieted at Bonbon's unamused gaze.
Well, they were onto something. Lyra knows what I'm talking about. Why don't you two go walking and discuss it?
Now the cream-colored mare looked amused. Her roommate looked as though she was about to protest before slumping and jerking her head at the door.
Come on, we might as well.
Vinyl didn't see this ending well, yet she followed the other unicorn downstairs regardless. Any progress was good progress, right? The second they were outside of the spell, noise returned like a hurricane, making them both constantly wince as they pushed through the crowd and out the door. Only when they were a full block away did the sound fade enough to allow speech without shouting.
I swear it wasn't that loud when I first got there,
Vinyl exclaimed, rubbing at her ears as they walked.
Probably the contrast. We went from dead silence to utter cacophony.
Lyra replied, without breaking stride.
Who says cacophony?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
For a while, they simply walked through the cold street, taking turns and following side streets that Vinyl had never seen before. It wasn't technically an uncomfortable silence, just a strange one. She half expected them to arrive back at the store and hear Lyra say,
"Good chat,"
or something. Before she could voice her thoughts, they arrived at the entrance to a park. The snow wasn't too thick yet, and much of the ground was still uncovered, mainly the path. The trees were all blanketed in white, and a few quiet couples took evening strolls through the pretty scenery. It was then that Vinyl noticed that time had slipped away from her yet again.
Oh crap! The stores have all closed!
The orange setting sun seemed to taunt her for losing track of time.
Relax, do you remember what Bonbon said? Some things can't be bought.
Lyra seemed perfectly comfortable, even without any warm clothes on. After finding a deserted area, she suddenly stopped under the big white oak tree and turned to face the DJ.
So what do you see in her? Huh?
Vinyl raised an eyebrow.
Octavia, what do you see in her? Come on, do you really want me to get all mushy in front of you?
Lyra squared her shoulders.
Just say what you feel. I'll endure. Alright. Well...
A gust of wind blew past, carrying the scent of wood fires.
I see nothing in her. I'm not crazy about her because of any one trait or quirk. Those are like the individual notes in a song. Alone, they're meaningless, but together, they make up her perfect melody. So it's not what I see in her, it's that I simply see her.
The DJ blushed. After a moment of silence, Lara cocked her head.
Her eloquence has rubbed off on you, I think.
Vinyl grinned in pride, her cheeks still red from embarrassment.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of rubbing involved.
Finally, Lara cracked a smirk.
I'll bet.
But her job wasn't over, so she sobered up quickly.
You've confirmed something for me. I know what you can give to Octavia. I was worried at first that you had already given it, but now I know otherwise.
What are you talking about?
You love her, don't you?
Vinyl's brain faltered for a moment before roaring back to life.
I do.
She knew she was wearing the dumbest deer-caught-in-headlights expression, yet there was no escaping the shock. The word that had been trying to catch her attention all day had finally revealed itself.
Have you told her that?
Lyra hinted with a smile.
Not yet.
Vinyl was grinning so hard her cheeks ached. She desperately wanted to sprint back to the university, but there was one thing left to do.
You know, Lyra, you're alright.
You aren't half bad yourself, Vinyl.
That was it. There was no need for anything more than that. Vinyl nodded once more, then ran. The wind rushing through her mane, a perpetual grin on her lips, and the perfect confession of love brewing in the back of her mind. Can't buy that in a candy store.